Morning, Commissioners. As you said, my name is David Schwenke. I'm an assistant county attorney. I'm one of the assistant county attorneys that works with code compliance on our public nuisance litigation. As mentioned, we're here today for the first reading of an ordinance prohibiting the accumulation of rubbish. If I was a private citizen, my first question would be, why do you need this ordinance? Because there's already regulations regarding the accumulation of rubbish and junk in the Mesa County Land Development Code. For some background, this past January, the county asked for and received an administrative warrant. An administrative warrant is a court order that allows the county to seize a property, clean it, and then return it to a property owner. My understanding from our code compliance officers is that this administrative warrant was the first one that the county has asked for in 30 years. Needless to say that was kind of our first test case to see how everything went. I believe our request at that time was supported both by our land development code and by state statute. That said, our current land use development code really doesn't talk about administrative warrants or how they work. Our land development code just simply says that a county can abate properties. State statute allows the county to pass an ordinance that spells out the process for getting these administrative warrants. This ordinance is transparent, and I think it'll help our code enforcement officers. While speaking with property owners, they will be able to point to this ordinance and say, this is the process we will follow if you do not clean up your property. The goal in these cases is to go after the worst offenders who have maintained their properties in poor conditions for long periods of time, or whose conditions are so bad that they constitute a public health and safety hazard. For example, I was told last week by our code compliance team that the landfill fees for cleaning up that first property in January were nearly identical to the landfill fees for the entire Clifton Spring cleanup. So, put another way, those neighbors were living next to a property that had nearly the same amount of junk on it as the entire amount of junk that was collected during the Clifton Spring cleanup. The citizens that we're going after have plenty of notice before we try and clean up their properties. And again, this ordinance is really geared towards those property owners who refuse to work with the county and have let their properties reach a state that's so poor that the county has to intervene. I can tell the commissioners that this proposed ordinance was submitted into the agenda on Friday. Since this board has received the proposed ordinance in writing prior to adoption, state law says I only have to read the title of the ordinance instead of reading the whole ordinance. So given that, I'm going to just read the title, which is as follows: an ordinance prohibiting the accumulation of rubbish. 10 days prior to adoption, we need to publish this proposed ordinance in the paper. If this board approves publishing the ordinance in the paper, we should be able to have it published in the Daily Sentinel by April 28th, 2023. I'm asking that you bring this ordinance back for final reading and adoption on May 9th, 2023. I believe we are working on getting a copy of this ordinance posted onto the county website, but I've been told there's been a couple technical difficulties with that. I know we will have it posted in the administration here at 544 Root Avenue in Grand Junction, Colorado, in case any members of the public want to read the full ordinance. Finally, just a few housekeeping matters. The county attorney's office and the community development briefed the board on this ordinance last week. Since that time, I made a couple minor changes to the ordinance. I corrected some of the numbering since I believe that was off. I also redid the style of the recitals to make it consistent with our other ordinances. We changed the term code enforcement officer to code compliance officer, which is the proper title, because again, our goal is to get voluntary compliance, not just to enforce our code. The planning department also asked that I add the term lawnmower into the definition of junk vehicle. I can attest from personal experience that I've seen junk lawnmowers in several of the cases that have been referred over to our office. And then finally, I wish I could say that there won't be any scrivener's errors after the first reading, but I know that's probably unrealistic, so I would ask that the court, or the board authorize us to correct any scrivener's errors. If the board has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm also happy to stick around and talk with any members of the public who have any questions about how we're handling these cases. Thank you.